welcome to Tales of Honor Podcast, a podcast dedicated to telling the true stories of every recipient of the Medal of Honor. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Tales of Honor Podcast. I'm your host, Christoph Ambrosch, and today's episode is episode number 361. I did promise you on the last episode that this one would be substantially longer, and I hope to not disappoint. Before we get into today's episode, we do have one birthday to go over. Walter Marm Jr. He is a former Army colonel that served during the Vietnam War, where he received the Medal of Honor. His birthday is November 20th, 1941, so he just turned 79 on Friday. So a very happy 79th birthday to Walter Marm. That's all I have for today, and actually that, I believe, is the last birthday for the month of November. So we'll pick up birthdays next month, but for today, we're just going to move right on into today's Tale of Honor, episode number 361. Frederick was born on the 9th of November, 1865, in New Carlisle, Ohio, and his family moved to Allen County, Kansas when he was 2 years old. His father, Edward, was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 1884, to which he served 5 terms. Frederick applied to the U.S. Military Academy in 1886, and records show that he was only 5 foot 4 inches and 120 pounds. He graduated high school in 1886 and was rejected from the military academy the same year, to which he then attended the University of Kansas. After college, Frederick worked as a trainman with the Santa Fe Railroad before becoming a reporter in Kansas City, Missouri. He was a reporter for a year and then decided to take up botany and went on to be part of an exploration and surveying expedition in Death Valley and later traveling to Alaska with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. In 1896, Frederick was inspired by General Daniel Sickles' speech at Madison Square Garden, which led him to join the Cuban Revolutionary Army. This was short-lived, though, when he came down with malaria and causing him to drop down to 95 pounds. The Cubans let him return to the States, where he received a commission to the U.S. Army with the 20th Kansas Infantry on the 13th of May, 1898. Frederick met Ida Bankhart at a patriotic gathering, and they were soon wed, just 2 weeks before deploying to the Philippines in support of the Philippine-American War. In the Philippines, Frederick was a colonel in command during several engagements, and his actions on the 27th of April, 1899, earned him a promotion to Brigadier General of Volunteers and the Medal of Honor. The citation reads, "Crossed the river on a raft, and by his skill and daring enabled the general commanding to carry the enemy's entrenched position on the north bank of the river, and to drive him with great loss from the important strategic position of Calumpit." Frederick went on to both plan and help carry out a mission to capture Filipino President Emilio Aguinaldo on the 23rd of March, 1901. This ended up making Frederick a national hero, as well as promoting him to Brigadier General in the regular army at the age of 35. When he returned to the States, he found himself at the center of criticism by Mark Twain and poet Ernest Crosby. Both were very against the war and wrote pieces of sarcasm and satire against Frederick's actions specifically. Frederick was considered to be an American expansionist, but he ended up making some insulting remarks about Senator George Frisbee Hoar, which resulted in President Theodore Roosevelt denying his furlough request, ordering him silenced, and officially reprimanded. This is where the story of Frederick ends up not looking that great. In 1906, he was commander of the Presidio of San Francisco, the Fortress of St. Francis, when the 1906 San Francisco earthquake hit. Even though he did not have the authority to do so, he declared martial law, which was never officially implemented. Frederick also ordered the demolition of buildings with black powder, artillery charges, and dynamite in order to create fire breaks to stop the spread of other fires throughout the city. He also ordered that any looters were to be shot on sight. These orders resulted in more fires and the shooting of numerous innocent people. At the time, he was praised for his actions, but later, many would take issue with his use of military force during a peacetime emergency. Frederick went on to serve as the commandant of the Army Service School in Fort Leavenworth, and then as the commander of the Department of Luzon, and later the Hawaiian Department. When the Spanish-American War began, he was the commanding general of the U.S. Army's Southern Department, and he occupied the city of Veracruz, where he commanded all forces that were involved with the hunt for Pancho Villa. Frederick was promoted to Major General in November of 1914, and he was favored by President Wilson to head the American Expeditionary Force. Unfortunately, the amount of stress he put on his work led to some health problems, and it was first reported as indigestion in January of 1917. On the 19th of February, 1917, Frederick was relaxing in the lobby of the St. Anthony Hotel in San Antonio. He was listening to an orchestra play the Blue Danube Waltz, and he suddenly collapsed from a massive heart attack just moments after saying, quote, "How beautiful it all is." Douglas MacArthur was a major at the time and was the one that had to break the news to President Wilson and Secretary of War Newton Baker. Who knows how World War I would have turned out if Frederick was the one in command of the American Expeditionary Force instead of his subordinate, Major General John Pershing. Frederick Funston Sr. was 51 when he died, and his casket was put on display both at the Alamo and at the San Francisco City Hall Rotunda. The Lake Merced Military Reservation was renamed Fort Funston. A training camp was built in 1917 next to Fort Riley and was named Camp Funston, as well as many other roads and parks bear his name. He is buried in the San Francisco National Cemetery, OS, Plot 3, Grave 68, where his wife, Ida, and their 3 sons, 1 daughter, and 1 grandson also lay with him. And that was a Tale of Honor. Thank you for listening to Tales of Honor Podcast. Head on over to talesofhonorpodcast.com where you can read these stories, see other ways to support the show, and easily share a story with your friends and family. Tales of Honor Podcast is written and produced by Christoph Ambrosch, and theme song, A New Beginning, is by Ben Sound. If you have any questions or comments, you can send them to talesofhonorpodcast@gmail.com. And until next time, I'm Christoph Ambrosch. Thanks for listening.